Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, which is Uncovering America's Best Kept Secrets, Family Resource Centers, and Family Resource Center Networks. We're so glad that you're here today. I am Julie Matusik, and I am part of the NFSN team. And a couple housekeeping items before we dive in here. If you are joining us online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. And if you have joined via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. And if you are online, you'll note a link here popping in the chat for you. And this is where you'll be able to find handouts that we'll be referencing throughout the webinar. In addition, you can put any questions that you may have into the Q&A portion of the Zoom console. So there's the chat, and then there's a separate one for Q&A. So we'll ask that you put any questions that you have right there. If they're in the chat, they may get lost, and we just don't want that. So definitely put those in the Q&A portion of Zoom. If you have any tech issues at all, our wonderful team member, Robin, is here. If you have any issues arise, whether it be audio or whatnot, please just let her know in the chat. And I will try to get to all of the questions at the end of the webinar, but if we're unable to, someone from the National Network team will follow up after the webinar. And also want to mention too that today's PowerPoint, as well as the handouts and a recording of today's webinar, will be on the NFSN website by this time tomorrow. And lastly, when you exit the webinar today, I just want to share that an evaluation will pop up and that will automatically appear for you. So we ask that you take a moment to complete that, as it provides us with very valuable feedback to inform the development of future webinars. All right, so let's get an idea of who is here today. So take a peek at this map and you'll see we've divided the United States and its territories into regions. And we're going to launch a poll. And so take a peek here. So you'll see those regions as well as outside of the United States as well. So if you're joining from Canada or another country, definitely let us know on the poll. We'll give you another moment here to respond. All right, let's take a peek at those results. Very cool. Okay, we have strong representation from the Northeast, the South, the West, and the Midwest as well. That's really great. And we have someone from outside of the country as well. So welcome. We're so glad that you have all joined us today. Great geographic diversity. All right, our next question is about your affiliation. So we will launch a poll here and ask, are you affiliated with a family resource center, or maybe a family resource center network, or another family support program? Maybe you're a parent leader, or in early care and education, and we have a couple different government responses there, or maybe a private funder. And if you put other, feel free to let us know in the chat what your affiliation is. All right, let's take a peek at those results. Oh, great. Wonderful diversity here as well. Looks like our strongest representation is from government and family resource centers and other family support programs, but lots of other groups represented as well. This is wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to respond to that. It's wonderful to know just who is here with us today, just to frame our conversation a little bit. So thanks again for responding to those polls. So we're going to walk through our roadmap of our time together today. And so today we're going to kick off with talking about family resource centers, and we'll talk about family resource center networks. We'll share some information about the National Family Support Network and some resources and opportunities that are available to you through the NFSN. So that is our roadmap of our time together today. So this concept of family support, it dates back to the late 1800s with creation of settlement houses in major metropolitan areas such as New York, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco. These settlement houses, they provided a large number of immigrants entering the country at that time with support and job training and English classes and social advocacy as a means to assist them in understanding and adapting to succeeding in American society. So the slide that you see on your screen here, this is of the Good Samaritan Settlement House in San Francisco. That's on the left. So from 1913, that photo is. And then on the right, you can see its modern look as the Good Samaritan Family Resource Center. And so this center continues to serve families today. And this, they originally served immigrants from Europe. And this Good Samaritan FRC has evolved, and it has evolved with the changing community needs and shifts in the neighborhood population into a family resource center, which now serves the Latinx community. So thousands of family resource centers have emerged organically across the country, yet their existence is still largely under the radar as what we call America's best kept secret. And so a family resource center is a community or a school-based welcoming hub of support, services, and opportunities that are designed to support families to be strong and to be successful. So they may be community based, like the image on the left. This is of a family resource center in Vermont. Or they may be school based, like the image that you see here on the right, which is in Kentucky. And so family resource centers, they may be in rural settings, like the image that you see on the left from Colorado, or in urban settings, like the image on the right of a family resource center in the Bronx in New York City. So wherever they are based, regardless, family resource centers are working with families in an approach that is not only two generational, but multi-generational, and it's strengths-based and family-centered. So each of these concepts are really important. So we'll talk about each of them individually here. So they're multi-generational. So maybe you've heard of two generational work or two gen work. Well, family support is the original, not just two-gen, but multi-gen work. Programs are working with children, their parents, and their grandparents as well. And family resource centers are strengths-based. This is because we see families as having strengths that we want to support them to build upon. And they're family-centered because everything we do has families at the center. And so they are designed for all families. So not only low income or highly challenged ones. This way, the support that they're providing is non-stigmatized, making it more readily accessible. And programming is provided at no cost or low cost for participants. The image that you see here on the right, this is of a family success center in New Jersey. And so in New Jersey, there are 57 family success centers across the state's 21 counties. Each county has at least one and typically more than one family success center. And so that includes highly affluent counties as well as highly challenged ones, because again, the belief is that all families can benefit from access to having support for two of the most important roles that we can have as adults, being parents and being spouses or partners. These two most important roles that we can have, they typically come with no support and no training, hence the value of universal access to family resource centers. And curious how many of you have have you heard about the Strengthening Families 5 Protective Factors before today? This is a framework that we'll talk about here, and just curious how many of you have heard of it before today? And not only have you heard of it, but how familiar are you? So, all right, give you another moment here to respond, and let's see those results. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we have all of these groups represented here. Well, if you're not, we'll talk about them now. So some of you very familiar, others not as much. I see Jeanette just got certified in the training of trainers for this framework. That is wonderful. That will really help you with working with families. So this framework comes to us from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and research has shown that these five protectors increase family stability, enhance child development, and reduce child abuse and neglect. So as we are working with families, we want to support them to build these protective factors because we know that they make a positive difference. And you'll see the five areas for this framework. So parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, and the social and emotional competence of children. So those are the five areas, which are also important as we're working with families. And so that's about all we'll talk about them for today. However, we encourage you to go to the Center for the Study of Social Policy's website to learn more. There's tons of resources out there that will help you learn more about this framework. So with Family Resource Centers, a couple key things to mention here. There is no dedicated federal funding for Family Resource Centers, which is different than other programs that you may be familiar with, such as Head Start or home visiting or after school programs. Yet, there are now been more than 3,000 family resource centers across the country that are working with more than 2 million people annually. So, why are so many public and private funders at the state, county, city, and community levels choosing to invest in family resource centers? Simply put, they're just a good idea. They're cost effective and they're highly adaptable for various communities, whether they're urban, rural, or ethnic. And they have demonstrated successful outcomes through multiple external evaluations. And as conveniently located hubs, they bundle and co-locate many services that you may already be familiar with, such as home visiting, evidence-based parent education, health screenings, play groups, fatherhood programs, family counseling, and food banks. Because family resource centers are shaped by and responsive to their communities, we often say if you've seen one family resource center, you've seen one family resource center just because they are all so different in the way that they are shaped by their community and for their community. So there's staff that have been hired that specifically represent and share the lived experiences and the layers of diversity of the families that they're serving. So it's all very intentional, as well as parent advisory committees, which have the opportunity to impact program development and implementation. And so, despite the Family Resource Center's organic development, there are remarkable similarities in the most common service areas. So, the data that you see here on the screen, this comes to us from a national study that was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that the National Family Support Network worked with a research institute on. And so you'll see here the most common service areas for family resource centers. And so the first two are actually the ones that you'll see in pretty much every family resource centers. They're kind of the bread and butter of all family resource centers. So the first is parenting support. So this exists on a continuum from lighter touch on the left and to more intensive services on the right. So parenting workshops, maybe just a one-time parenting workshops, a great way to support parents, but lighter touch. And then as we continue along, we have parenting support groups, and parent education series that use an evidence-based curriculum, and then home visiting. And then with the home visitors, they actually have access to all of the resources that the Family Resource Center is connected with. So wonderful that they are working together with to support parents in this way. And then access to resources, again, exists on a continuum from lighter touch to more intensive services. So enhanced information and referral, making that warm handoff, would be our lighter touch way to provide access to resources. And then we have concrete support. So this is where the centers are directly providing at the program things like clothing and food and rental assistance. And then working with families over time to address family identified goals. And then we have the co-location of resources as the most intensive way that these resources can be accessed by families, where these different resources are actually all located in the same building. So families aren't needing to bundle up their little ones and drag them to multiple sites. They're able to access multiple resources all under one roof. And then child development activities and parent leadership development are two of the other most common service areas of family resource centers. And family resource centers, they not only provide programs, but they build communities of peer support for families to develop social connections that reduce isolation and reduce stress, which are highly correlated to child abuse. And would like to share this brief video with you. This is from Sheila, who's located in upstate New York, and would like to share this with you just about her experiences with family resource centers.
People underestimate how challenging it can be of trying to balance parenting and effective parenting, mind you, and not having a space to actually vent and communicate and learn alternate ways of rearing their children. People don't realize it is a support that they need, not once in a while, but like all the time. I could see the excitement, the smiles. It is the same every single time they walk in the door. The staff is so friendly, the space is so inviting. So it gives us an opportunity to just like kind of brush off life and then escape into this space where they could just relax, and it nourishes us, it feeds us, and allows us to just make, take all of that and positive energy and do life. Regardless of anyone's socioeconomic status, regardless of racial background, educational level, the need is exactly the same. It is a place, a need for a place to be able to sit down with other parents and do life together. And that is something that is so impactful. Once they have that support system in place, it has a ripple effect. And we will glean from that because our communities will thrive. The more support, I mean, it's just, it's like a domino effect.
Every time I share Sheila's story, it just makes me tear up a little bit. It's just incredible the experiences that families can have through family resource centers. So speaking of family resource centers, we are curious about your experience with Family Resource Center. So to your knowledge, does your state have programs that look like family resource centers? Like we mentioned earlier, New Jersey, they called family success centers. Some areas they're called family enrichment centers. So sometimes they are called different things, but to your knowledge, does your state have programs that look like this? All right, let's peek at those results. That's incredible. So yeah, it looks like 83% of folks have heard of family resource centers, and some know and some not sure. And like we talked about, sometimes they're flying under the radar. So they might be there, and we just haven't had an opportunity to see them yet. So thank you so much for responding to that. It's always great to get a pulse from across the country and outside of the country, just what's out there, because we're still uncovering more of them. So one of the things that we like to share is about the FRCs and their COVID response. So two of the things that families have been seeking the support for over the past several years now throughout the pandemic have been parenting support and access to resources, which happen to be the bread and butter of any family resource centers, whether they are urban or rural or school-based or community-based. So family resource centers more than rolled up their sleeves to help support families through this crisis. And so the photos here are from across the country. You can see at the top, there's a drive up show of support for families in Kentucky, as well as infant supplies that were distributed in Colorado, a virtual bilingual story time in Massachusetts. And then in Kentucky, the school-based family resource centers took on delivering free lunches to students while the schools themselves were closed. So this is truly just a very small sampling, but great examples of the things that family resource centers did above and beyond to respond to families in this greatest time of need. And here you can see just since then, this is since May of 2022, you can see the great investments that states have made in family resource centers. Because again, there's not federal funding for family resource centers, but states, in addition to communities, are seeing the need and the value of family resource centers. So investments have been made in family resource center network infrastructure. So those backbone entities, so Hawaii, North Carolina, Texas, state investments in that infrastructure, as well as some already had investments in family resource centers, but then deepened their investment. So Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, New Hampshire, New York City, the state of New York, Oklahoma, Utah, West Virginia. This is where they've decided to invest more in their states. And then new networks. So these backbone entities were created and established in Minnesota and Nebraska. And first-time investments in family resource centers. So these states said, hey, this is wonderful. We need to invest in this, right? So this is happening in Kansas and Michigan, South Carolina, Virginia, Washington. So this is just a high-level overview of the states that have invested in family resource centers. And again, these are new investments since 2022. This is just a scope of what has happened in these past couple of years. So I see a question in the chat about Kentucky not being listed, and this is because Kentucky actually has been investing in family resource centers for quite some time, which is absolutely incredible. They have 887 family resource centers across their state, and their state does also see the value of family resource centers. So yeah, absolutely. This is just showing since the pandemic how things have really picked up the pace in terms of states recognizing the value and the impact of family resource centers. So yes, so just want to call that out. Yeah, definitely. Also want to share with you here, this slide developed in partnership with Casey Family Programs, which is one of the National Family Support Network's national partners. It illustrates how family resource centers work with families across the continuum of potential involvement in the child welfare system. Yes, and here we want to share out some some data points that it's so exciting to highlight that when these investments are made in family resource centers, there is an amazing return on investment. So this one comes to us from Alabama. And so the state of Alabama found for every dollar that they were investing in family resource centers, the state of Alabama received a nearly $5 immediate and long-term consequential financial benefits. And this comes to us from a University of Chicago study, which found that neighborhoods with family resource centers had a 26% lower rate of child abuse and neglect. Investigations, particularly that similar neighborhoods had without them. So having these family resource centers in their communities greatly reduced the rate of investigations into child abuse and neglect in the communities. And so this is another really great one that we love to highlight. Teller County, Colorado, which is a semi-rural county outside of Colorado Springs. Since their Human Service Agency moved to a differential response system in 2016, where they are referring screened out families to participate in Family Resource Center services on a voluntary basis, they have seen a 63% drop in their child abuse rate. And they have one family resource center in their whole county. So think of not only the cost savings, but the human cost savings as well. So many families that are now spared entry into a highly traumatizing system that literally no family wants to have anything to do with. And once you're in, you may never get out of. So it's just incredible to see a 63% reduction with one family resource center in this county. One of the latest data points comes to us from research that was supported by Casey Family Programs that illustrates the specific child welfare system's cost savings, both in semi-rural Teller County that we just talked about, as well as urban Orange County in California. So you can see these investments in family resource centers, just the incredible return on investments. Yes, I see in the chat, it literally gives me chills as well. Yes, absolutely. So here you can see another data point that comes to us from Colorado as well, where families that are participating in family resource centers that demonstrate statistically significant improvements in economic self-sufficiency, health, their concrete support in times of need, social support, family functioning and resilience, and caregiver child nurturing and attachment. So you can just see the incredible difference here. And I know we were just talking about Kentucky. We are excited to highlight Kentucky here. Kentucky is the second largest network in the country with 887 school-based family resource centers. And just they have seen vast improvements in children's educational success and attainment since developing family resource centers 30 years ago. I know it's been a while ago, 30 years ago, as part of their statewide education reform legislation. So they moved from the 45th place in 1990, and they're now in the top 15 school systems in the country. Yes, we can see why, right? So one of the common questions that comes up with family resource centers, like, okay, they're incredible, but how much does it cost to run one? What does it look like? The short answer is it varies a bit. It varies in relation to local cost of living, specific programming, and the physical space. So we're going to give a couple examples here, just two quite different examples to just so you can see how much it will vary. So we talked about New Jersey earlier and how they have them throughout their state. And so a typical community-based Family Resource Center, Family Success Center is what New Jersey calls them. They have an annual budget of 240 to 300,000 per center. And this includes 3 to 4 full-time staff. This is paying for the space. All of that is included in that budget. And then a school-based family resource center in Kentucky has an annual budget of quite a bit less, around 33 to 82,000. And this is with 1 to 2 full-time staff. And with these centers, space and other resources are provided in kind, which, as you can see, has such an impact on their bottom line. So these couple examples show you an idea of what it costs to run a family resource center, but it does vary greatly depending on different factors. Another common question with family resource centers is, how are they funded? So most of them are funded by states, county, and municipal governments. And some of them are leveraged with federal funding, such as community-based child abuse prevention funding, or CBCAP funds. So even though they're not, a federally funded line item, you're able to leverage funding through CBCAP funds, for example. And other than those, foundations, corporations, individual donors, and in-kind supports are so important to keep family resource centers funded. And one of the other things to mention in relation to funding is you can leverage funding for family resource centers to provide up to 12 months of in-home parent skill-based programs for parents and relatives that are caring for children as candidates for foster care. So one thing to note here, when we're talking about in-home, it means that the child has not been removed from their family, not that the services are often offered in the family's homes. And so these family resource centers are providing programs on the Title IV prevention services, these Family First Clearinghouse. So they're providing particular things on this clearinghouse and able to leverage these Family First funding. So some of the examples of things that are on the clearinghouse that you can leverage this funding for are Incredible Years or Healthy Families America, motivational interviewing, Parents as Teachers, Triple P. These are all ways that you can leverage this Family First funding for family resource centers. So family resource centers can be leveraged to implement kinship navigator programs as well. And networks of family resource centers can support successful planning and implementation of Family First. So New Hampshire is actually the first state to do this. So if you're interested in learning more about their kinship program, you can go to our Webinar Wednesday page, and I'll tell you in just a little bit where to find that on the website. Okay, so I want to, now that we've talked about family resource centers and all that they're doing for families, let's look one level up and talk about how these family resource centers are connected. So not only have cities and counties and states hit upon the value of family resource centers, but they have also hit on the value of networking them together. So when we talk about family resource center networks, here's the definition for you on the screen. So they consist of 2 or more family resource centers. So whether you have 2 or 887 or even more or less in between there, as long as you have 2, you can have a family resource center network. These family resource center networks ensure coordinated quality support for families. And so these networks serve as the backbone entity to leverage and to coordinate the collective impact of their members. And these networks may be in independent nonprofits, they may be coordinated by a public or private funder, or they may be led by family resource center directors that are serving in a volunteer leadership capacity. And similar to how we talked about the most common functions of family resource centers, we want to share the most common functions of Family Resource Center networks, which also comes to us from that same study that we worked with a research institute on. So these networks, they are increasing the connectedness amongst their members, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration for their members. They're providing training and technical assistance. They're working on advocacy and policy and legislation. And they are providing and maintaining a shared data tracking system. So not all of the networks are doing all of these things, but these are the most common functions of networks across the country. And you'll see here a couple ways that we describe Family Resource Center networks. So we talk about the stages that Family Resource Centers are in, as well as the types of networks. So the stages we have broken down into three. And so there's emerging. So this is when you're just getting started. You're determining who's going to be at the table, what you want to focus on. And so those are in the birth to 3 years of age with the stages, and then evolving. So as you are further developing, you may hire a contractor or you may have your first staff, and the network begins to have more structure and capacity to do more. And then as you continue your development, networks, they are then become established networks once they've been around for around 5 years typically. This is when you typically have staffing and a track record of activities. And one interesting characteristic of these networks is that they have weathered crises and they have decided to stick together. And so the types of networks, the different types of networks that there are. So there's volunteer coordinated. And so they're led, these networks, they're led by FRC directors themselves in voluntary leadership positions. They don't have any paid network staff at all. And so West Virginia is an example of this. And then we have funder coordinated. So these networks are led by a public department or a foundation that both funds and convenes the centers. So Nevada is an example of this. And then there's an independent nonprofit. So these are staffed independent nonprofit organizations that functions as a membership alliance with members that are paying dues. So these networks may raise and distribute funds. So they may be an intermediary or they may not be. Some of them are and some of them are not intermediaries. In Colorado and Maryland are two examples of the independent non-profit networks. So looking one layer up again, we talked about Family Resource Centers, how they're connected, and now let's talk about how Family Resource Center networks are connected. So the National Family Support Network was co-founded by the 8 states that you see here on this map. So the first 4 years that the national network was in existence, the national network had no paid staff, and the steering committee members coordinated the work of the national network as volunteers on top of their jobs of running their state networks. And since then, we have more than quadrupled in size and now have 39 member networks. So 38 states in the District of Columbia that represent more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million people annually. So the newest to join are Minnesota and Nebraska. And we just love to see this map continuing to go green. It's really exciting to see. The mission of the National Family Support Network is to promote the positive outcomes for all children and families and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And the vision of the National Family Support Network, in short, is that it's about turning that whole map that you just saw, turning it all green, ensuring that all families across the country have access to quality family support services in their own communities that are supported by strong family resource center networks. And so the National Family Support Network focuses its work in three different buckets. And the first is connecting and convening member networks to enhance their effectiveness. So increasing the connectedness amongst members for peer learning and for mutual support. The second is promoting family support best practice and evaluation. So, raising awareness of what quality family support is and promoting a common language and standards and evaluation of it through the national implementation of the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And the third is raising the visibility of the value and the impact of family resource centers and family resource center networks in order to strengthen and increase support for families. And so, want to share a little bit of information about what it looks like to become a member of the National Family Support Network. So, member network criteria is that two or more family resource centers are coming together to form this network. They may be at any stage of network development. So maybe just getting started, maybe been around for a little bit. Regardless, you're able to join. And there's just one network per state. So that's intentional, making sure that folks across the state are connecting with other folks. And dues are intentionally kept very affordable to make this accessible. So the dues also cover a whole state, regardless of the number of family resource centers in the state. New member dues, again, kept very affordable intentionally. So there's $700 for volunteer coordinated networks and $1,000 for all others. And then ongoing membership dues, you can see again, are kept very affordable, making sure networks are able to join um, the national network. And as we're talking about quality work with families, want to be sure to share this information with you as well about the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. So these standards are designed to be used by all stakeholders. So public departments, foundations, community-based organizations, and families as a tool for planning and providing and assessing quality practice. And they uniquely integrate and operationalize two key frameworks from our field, the family support practice, the principles of family support practice, and the strengthening families approach and their research-based evidence-informed 5 protective factors that we talked about earlier. So they are part of the foundation of this framework. And so these standards, they create a common language and expectations across different kinds of family strengthening and support programs. So whether you're working for a family resource center or a home visiting program or a child development program, these standards can have value and have help you speak that same language. They also help ensure that families are supported and strengthened through quality practice. And the standards, they are everyone's favorite price, free. Everyone can access these on the National Network website, which is in the chat. You can go to the website and hover over standards. You drop down to overview. You can download the standards for free and access them. And then there's also the implementation tools that are on the website as well. Again, free, so everyone can have access to these and be able to think about quality work with families. We revised the standards in 2020, and then they were approved in 2021 by the membership, where they reflected an enhanced focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as relevance for both Canada and United States context. So we looked at that in that revision. And they focus on 5 core areas of practice. So family centeredness, family strengthening, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and community strengthening and evaluation. So those are the core areas of practice for these standards. Here you can see just kind of where the standards have been over the past decade. And now over 15,000 people across the country have been trained in the standards. And so you can see just where the standards have been. And this map gets updated monthly. So it's so exciting to see the continued growth of the standards and therefore the enhanced support for families across the country. So we want to share this where the National Family Support Network worked with our members to develop a blueprint for how to scale family resource centers and family resource center networks in order to ensure that all families have access to quality family support and strengthening services. The National Family Support Network publicly reports back on progress annually with a briefing event that happens in May. And the most recent one just happened on May 31st. So you can catch the recording of that on the National Network website. So be sure to visit the homepage of the National Family Support Network website to access that recording, just to see the incredible growth that is happening across the country. So since the beginning, when the National Family Support Work was just an idea, the co-founders reached out to these organizations, these entities that offered their support. And so you can see the different entities that support the National Family Support Network. So this means that we regularly participate in each other's events, serve on each other's committees, we co-sponsor events with each other, we present at each other's events, and work collaboratively on joint projects. And of course, the National Family Support Network works collaboratively with many other organizations as well, but these are the national partners of the National Family Support Network. I mentioned some resources that are available to you through the National Family Support Network. So want to share some key things. There's so much information on the website. Just want to call out some particular things so you know where to find it. So Family Resource Center resources, we'll start there. So on the Family Resource Center page, which you'll find by going to National Family Support Network, you'll hover over Family Support there, and then you'll drop down to Family Resource Centers. That's how you'll find that page. And on that page, you'll see a Family Resource Center overview. There's a document, like a one-pager you can download, which is really helpful when sharing about what Family Resource Centers are all about. There's videos, there's research reports, systems level funding information, all kinds of goodies on there. A lot of the data points that we talked about today, they're on there as well. You can take Family Resource Center virtual tours. Really encourage you to check out that page. There's also the Webinar Wednesday library, which if you go to, it'll be on the right. If you hover over Webinar Wednesdays, you click on that, it'll take you to the page. And then from there, you can navigate to different topics on the Webinar Wednesday library. So one of them being Family Resource Centers. So if you want to check out a Family Resource Center that is in a library, that's one example, or family resource centers that particularly support certain populations. They're on there as well. We've had the opportunity to highlight so much incredible work across the country. So be sure to check out that library. Want to share these two hubs that are on the NFSN website as well. So the Family Resource Center Learning Hub is a compilation of resources for those that are developing individual family resource centers. So there's samples from the work happening across the country from family resource centers. There's also templates that the National Family Support Network has developed as well that you can use. So you're not reinventing the wheel when you're starting a new family resource center. And we also have the Family Resource Center Network Hub. So this is a compilation again of both templates and documents from member networks that can be used as examples for Family Resource Center networks and for funders of Family Resource Centers. So I also want to mention too that the Family Resource Center Learning Hub was developed with the support of Casey Family Programs. So very appreciative and so excited to share these resources with you. And again, these resources are everyone's favorite price as well. They're free. You can access these on the NFSN website. And you can specifically access them on if you go to the hover over family support programs and I want to give you the right information. Hover over family support and then drop down to either Family Resource Center or Family Resource Center networks, and they'll be at the bottom of those respective pages. Want to share with you too another resource that may be really helpful as you're learning about the incredible work that's happening across the country, which is the Member Network Snapshot document. So if you go to go to National Family Support Network and hover over About Us and drop down to membership, you'll be able to access, we have an interactive map where you can click on different states to learn about what's happening in those states. You can see here a sample from Alabama. So you can see when they were founded, some of their functions, what their different family resource centers are offering in their state. So this is just a sample, but you can see this for the member networks of the National Family Support Network. Also want to share with you too the Network Hub. So we talked about this briefly, but this gives a little bit more deeper dive into this Family Resource Center Network Hub. So there's two sections once you dive into this hub. The first is Network Tools for Networks. So our network tools for family resource centers, sorry, I misspoke. So these are sample tools that networks can use with family resource centers. So maybe family resource center identification surveys, finding out what FRCs are in your state. That's one thing that multiple states have done and have used templates from this hub. Family resource center evaluation frameworks, requests for proposals, proposal review tools. So these are all of the network tools that you can use for family resource centers. And then there's network tools for networks as well. So samples that networks will use to run a network. So maybe member agreements, network development continua, network job descriptions, network operating guidelines, things like that. And again, you can access this on the network page. And some services that are available to you through the National Family Support Network. So the National Network can facilitate connections to member networks. And we're available to present for key stakeholders. So educational leaders, child welfare leaders, children's trust funds, other public and private funders about working with and investing in family resource centers. We're also available to provide technical assistance for Family Resource Center network development. And we have trainings available for you as well to support you in your working with families. So the standard certification training, as well as the developing and sustaining effective parent advisory committee training. All right, I know that's a lot of information and want to just pause here and see if you have any questions at all. If you have questions that you'd like answered, please click the Q&A panel there in the Zoom panel. Click the Q&A icon and enter your questions in there. So let's see. So enter those in there. And if you have already, we're going to get to questions in just a moment. And so if you have any just thoughts that aren't questions, feel free to share it in the chat. You know what resonated with you most today? I know it's a lot of information. Would love to hear what resonated with you from all of the information shared. And what would you be interested in exploring more? If there's any questions that you have that we can help support you, definitely put that in the Q&A section so we know that we can provide some support for you. All right, we're going to get to questions in just a minute. But just want to call out the Webinar Wednesday library. You can see here there's a screenshot from the website. So if you go to National Family Support Network.org and hover over Webinar Wednesdays in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this landing page. This is just the top portion of it. But this is where you'll see upcoming webinars when they're scheduled. You'll see recordings of webinars, so such as this one. This is where it'll be. If you want to share this with anyone tomorrow or after, that'll be down towards the bottom under the core webinars. This is one of our regular ones that we offer as a staple to make sure we're getting out this key information. But you'll see the different areas of the libraries here. So family resource centers, family resource center networks, standards implementation, parent leadership development, and advancing the field. So lots of goodies on this page. Encourage you to check it out. As we're talking about parent leadership, whether you are starting a new parent advisory committee or wanting to strengthen an existing one, this developing and sustaining effective parent advisory committee training is a wonderful place to start. It's a unique and highly rated virtual training for program staff. So this is particularly for staff working at the program level, to be able to see to realize and put into place this great potential of parent advisory committees. And it's co-trained by a NFSN team member, as well as an experienced national parent leader. And we talked about the standards of quality and just the incredible support that they can provide for families and helping us to work with families in a quality way. So we have open trainings. These are held virtually. So you can join from across the country, outside of the country. We invite you to participate in this training. And we have one coming up later this month and next month. And if you are in a state that is already a NFSN member, you may have trainers in your state that are also providing this training. So you'll see if you go to nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org, hover over standards of quality, and then drop down to certification trainings, and you'll be able to see what's coming up in your states. All right, I'm going to put my contact information up here. That way, if we don't have time to get to all the questions, you'll know where to find us after today. Our website is up here as well, so you'll be able to find everything. All right, let's get to questions. All right, so somebody asked if family resource centers are focused on foster families only. And the short answer is no, they're not. They're for everyone. It's universal access. And somebody had called out in their city, they aren't seeing them partner with organizations that do prevention. Yeah, and it looks different from place to place. And particularly in the state of Florida, which is what you were talking about, their network started actually in the Tampa area, and they're working hard to connect outside of the Tampa. So they're working on expanding that because remember, networks can consist of 2 family resource centers or more, right? So they started out in just the Tampa area and are working on branching out. So they may not be as much in other cities just yet. But if you know of programs in different cities, definitely reach out and we can connect you to the folks at the Florida network for sure. And feel free to email if you have more specific questions. There's a question about if there's any family support centers or family resource centers in New York City. And yes, there are. There are family enrichment centers in New York City, and encourage you to, you can Google them, or if you go to, I believe if you go to our website, similar to what Robin put in the chat around the snapshots, if you go to the member page, I think there may be some contact information on there as well, but definitely reach out if you're trying to get a hold of them. But you can just Google Family Enrichment Centers, New York City. And I know I've found some pages before. So definitely let us know if you have any trouble locating them. They have quite a few, and they're in the process of opening more as well. Let's see. Yeah, somebody said, I love learning. Is there support? That there is support to help Family Resource Center work with funders. Yeah, yeah, there's so much information for sure. Let's see. Is there a way a brand new Family Resource Center can get some help like with a startup? Yeah, yeah, definitely reach out to us if you have questions, if you'd like additional support. That's definitely something that we could help point you to some different tools that are available. And if you have any particular questions related to the startup, definitely let us know as well. Yeah, Ruth shared that she's excited to hear what other family resource centers are doing. It's inspiring. And I'd love to see our center expand once we can get funding to do so. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great to see. And definitely encourage you to check out the Webinar Wednesday page. You can see just all kinds of different programming. Even if you check out the National Briefing website or the briefing that was just last week, that would be a great place to go as well, just to hear all the different programs what it looks like. We had a school-based Family Resource Center virtual tour and a community-based virtual tour, and two just really strong examples of what's happening across the country. I see in the chat folks shared what resonated was the national partners involved in the Family Resource Center effort. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're so helpful, so supportive. Yeah, it's Jeanette shared that she's would like to learn more about funding for Family Resource Centers and for Family Resource Center staff. And so she's just not sure about money and grants that are available. Yeah, and depending on where you're located, we may be able to offer some ideas, but for sure. Yes, and we can put our contact information in the chat too. Oh, and there it is. Robin already did that. Perfect. Um, yeah, and thank you so much for Robin for putting in the chat for Jeanette there. You can hear about how Utah successfully increased their funding. So yeah, a really great example. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. All right. And that's all of the questions right now. If you have any other question that you didn't hit enter on, feel free to type that in real quick. We really appreciate everyone's participation today and hope you found some helpful information. As a reminder, a brief evaluation will appear on your screen when you exit the webinar today. We do really appreciate your feedback and your input to inform future webinars. We truly read every word. And I don't see where any other questions have been answered. Our questions have been asked, so we won't have an opportunity to answer them, of course. But if you think of any, feel free to email us. All of our contact information is on the National Network website. And as a reminder, the recording of this will be available on the website by this time tomorrow, as well as all of the materials. So thank you again so much for participating, and we hope you all have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. Bye-bye.